Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
So there I was, minding my own business. This crazy old codger with a cane shows up, says he's my distant relative. I don't see any resemblance. So he says, how would you like to be rich? So I said, sure. So he lays this podcast on me. He says, this podcast will tell me the outcome of every sporting event till the end of the century. All I have to do is bet on the winner, and I'll never lose. So I say, what's the catch? He says, no catch. Just keep it a secret. After that, he disappeared. I never saw him again. Oh, and he told me one more thing. He said, someday, some crazy, wild-eyed kid and a 6'1" man who grew up in England might show up asking about that podcast. And if that ever happens, funny. I never thought it'd be Blank Check.
Griffin, I am 6'3", I just want to say.
God damn
I
it.
just want to make that clear. I am
Wait, did he say 6'2"?
He said I was 6'1", which is fine. I'm not worried about my height.
Why do men care so much about the inches in a height?
Yes.
I don't care. Look, I
Yes,
feel like there's an
thank you.
insinuation there, and I understand where you're, but I
No,
was
no,
just
I'm not insinuating anything. I truly don't understand why men are like, no, I'm not 5'11", I'm 6 foot. I don't get it.
Here's the other thing. I think I'm 6'3". When's the last time I got
6'1".
measured by like height? Like probably when I was like 16 years old.
thank
I
you.
don't know how tall
You don't
I am
get
anymore.
physicals every year?
I do not. I mean, I guess I like go to the. I just feel like they never measure my.
They
like,
measure
you.
you.
Know, all right. Well, maybe they do, and I'm
No,
still
they
6'3".
do. They measure you.
He's too tall. The doctor can't reach the top of his head. He's too tall. They just shrug and give up.
Also, if my future self...
You're 6'3". I said 6'1".
You said 6'1". I'm 6'3". It's fine. I don't care.
Sorry.
Do you have a ruler
I genuinely
right now?
don't care.
Yes, you do. We've been talking about it for 2 minutes. Do you have like a measuring tape?
Yeah.
I mean, I do somewhere.
Do you know if it's easily accessible?
Tape yourself. Tape yourself quickly.
Because we can end this right here, right now.
We can settle this. Nicole, I'm so happy we're doing this. What were you about to say about your future self?
Told me that I had to listen. Oh, it's so readily available. My future.
It was right around the corner.
If my future self told me I had to listen to a podcast to get rich, I wouldn't do it. I don't listen to podcasts.
Really?
I find them mind numbing because it's a conversation that like I'm not part of.
You just want to be a guest
I love
on
talking.
everything.
But my very approximate solo measure puts me at 6'2". So I don't know where that leaves us.
Oh, probably 6'1".
Oh,
But
interesting.
I'm also
Actually, probably 6'1". Maybe I had it right the
here's
first
the thing
time.
as well. Like, I'm probably like 5'11" because I slouch so much, and the doctor's the one like making you stand up straight against the wall. I'm not 6'3". I don't present as 6'3".
No. See, David, now I'm worried that you're 6'3" slouching, and the next time you go to the doctor, you're going to stand up straight and turn out to be 6'8".
All I know is they made me play basketball when I was a little kid because I was so tall.
Who's
I was so
they?
bad at it. Like, my parents, I don't know, gym teachers, they were always like, well, you're so tall, you'll be good at this. And, I don't have any hand-eye coordination.
And I, much like Michael J. Fox, will look like a tiny boy for the entirety of my life.
But that's good.
You look great.
I mean,
I think it's
In
good
certain
because you're
ways.
also aging well, so you don't look like an old baby. You just look like a sprite young man.
Nicole, I feel like I'm heading towards old baby. I do. I look in the mirror and I get worried about being a wrinkled Benjamin Button baby in 5 years.
Not yet. I think you'll have to. Actually, you might not ever have to worry about it. Like, look at Leslie Jordan. He just looks like a cute little old man, not an old baby, and he's very tiny.
I mean, that's a dream. I hope I end up like Leslie,
Leslie Jordan.
That's best case scenario.
Leslie Jordan's just going to cash
Absolutely.
those cute old man checks for another,
He's
30 years.
so cute. I love him so much.
He's very adorable.
So cute. I'm realizing what I now want to see is like a variety special hosted by Leslie Jordan and Baby Yoda. Like I want to see a Baby Yoda, Leslie Jordan double act doing like skits and songs and dances. Right? They
I
make a
can
great
kind
team.
of get into it, but like I don't know how I feel about Baby Yoda in a variety special. Also, I have very little interaction with Baby Yoda.
That having been said,
The last time we were on a podcast together, we talked Baby Yoda.
Yes, I have not watched any more
We
episodes.
talked very
Right, but yeah, he could get sort of David Pumpkin.
So you've only seen those first 3.
Right, yeah, you were right. You tapped out at 3.
Yeah.
But I have a counterpoint, Nicole. Your favorite Star Wars movie is the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh my God, it's so good. I love it. I've seen it twice now.
Right. So that's what I'm pitching. I'm pitching like a Leslie Jordan Baby Yoda Christmas. I'm picturing that kind of tone.
You know, I'm on board now. I wasn't on board, but now I am.
And they're like Penn and Teller. Like Baby Yoda still remains a silent act. You know, we're not going to have him speaking, yapping about. Leslie Jordan's doing all the talking.
Okay.
And Baby Yoda is just there giving you energy, picking up objects, drinking tea.
But I
David's
worry
miming.
because Casey Musgraves or Musgroves or Must something, she's a country singer. She had a Christmas special, and it was not okay. It was not for me.
Why was it not okay?
It was like
what was
bad.
The problem?
I don't want to say it's bad because like several people were involved, maybe hundreds. I don't know. A lot of people tried really hard to make it good, but like I watched it and I was like, I don't know. I don't know if anyone tried hard enough. It was just like weird and strange, and the line reads were insane. The director must have been napping the whole time. It was just so, you have to watch it. I don't want to be rude, but it was not for me.
I'm seeing that James Corden swung by. I'm looking at the guest list here. Kendall Jenner was there.
Yeah, who knows why?
Lana Del Rey. Wow.
Yeah,
the
it was like a
Rockettes
lot
were
of
there.
people, but then it wasn't very cohesive. Some of the sets were really cute. I don't know. I just think it was a real miss. I sound like a bitch. What?
I have 2 questions.
Hell yeah, dude.
Question number 1 is, I wonder if these things just need to be on network television.
Right.
Like if it, to some degree, a holiday special needs to have copious network notes.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
Maybe.
2, did they get Valanche in the writer's room? Like that might be the whole problem right there.
That he's involved or that he's not involved?
That he's not involved. If you're making a Christmas special, you gotta get Bruce.
And I don't think he was involved.
I don't think he was. No, I don't know what Valanche is doing these days.
there's the
Griffin, can you
problem.
introduce our show?
Yes, get him in a room with Baby Yoda and Leslie Jordan. Thus concludes our section. Do a Christmas special with Leslie Jordan and Baby Yoda. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
And this is the podcast old Biff warned you about. It's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their career are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce baby. And this is a mini-series on the films of Robert Zemeckis. It's called Podcast Away. And today we are talking about Back to the Future 2, which is one of his first big check cashings.
Sure.
One could say, right?
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
Roger Rabbit
Right. He's
is
getting to do
him
whatever he wants. Right.
doing the like, right? But he was like, that's a blank check where he did something so wild and ambitious that there was a big chance that he could have failed and really embarrassed himself in the process. This movie is him playing with house money, like going back and saying, "I'm gonna do Back to the Future 2." He could do whatever the fuck he wanted.
Nicole,
No?
you specifically picked this movie, right? When we were asking you to come on,
Yeah.
the Zemeckis, like this is your Back to the Future movie. This is your Zemeckis movie.
Well,
right?
Back to the Future 1 is my Zemeckis movie.
Well, sure.
But I enjoy Back to the Future 2.
Okay,
And I don't love Back to the
I love
Future
it. I
3.
love it.
But if it's on TV, I will not turn it off.
Okay, so all 3 really check the box for it.
it's like
Yeah, the first one, though, really, I truly love. I've seen it hundreds of times.
Agree.
well, our guest today is Nicole Byer, recent Emmy not winner.
Hell yeah, dude.
But
You didn't win
I didn't
it.
realize this. You hosted all 4 nights of the Creative Arts Emmys.
Sure did. Which was my first indication that I was not going to win the Emmy.
Oh, you think they're like,
Well-
they know, like, okay, well, there's not going to be an awkward moment where the host wins.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was like, all right, I'll take your money as opposed to a statue.
But I was like pestering you all of last week to try to get a record time down because of our stupid podcast having this very set schedule of the order we need to do episodes in. And then I realized only after the fact, I was pestering you while you were hosting 4 successive nights of an award show.
It's okay.
From home. So I apologize. I apologize for that, Nicole.
It's okay. Honestly, I shot it all in one night, but then like a lot of productions have started up at the same time. So people want table reads and recording. It's been really wild.
Well then,
are you still like how are you? Yes, thank you for doing this.
Oh yeah.
How are you navigating like stuff at home versus stuff that you have to show up and go someplace to do? What is your attitude on that? Because I know a couple weeks ago I was talking with you about that. And you were like, I'm afraid of outdoors and other people.
I was afraid of outdoors and people, but now you better let me do a voiceover at a studio. I don't want you dropping off shit at my house that then I have to set up and then shove back in a suitcase. And I don't know how to do that. And then the Wi-Fi connection's not great. And then the Zoom clunks out. No, send me to a studio where there's nobody else there, or maybe like one other person, where everything's wiped down. And I bring my own little hand sanitizer. I like that. When there's like a lot of people, that gets scary. Like I've been doing a lot of COVID tests at the lot, and that's a little frightening because there's a ton of people there, but like everyone's scared of each other.
Sure. So everyone's just.
So it's kind of insane. You like eyes get wide when you get too close and you're like, we're not in the same production. It's a wild time to be alive.
The voiceover stuff I love because you're in like a plexiglass Hannibal Lecter cage. Like you feel even safer in some ways than you do at home. But the second I'm in a room with another person, I start to freak out.
Yeah.
It's all fair.
So Back to the Future, a big franchise for you. It's one of my ultimate franchises, Nicole. David was saying when we recorded our Back to the Future episode, and I was very much on one talking about how perfect that movie is, that like he likes Back to the Future, but it's not one of his big franchises. It isn't one of the movies that was like
how do you not
foundational
love Back to the Future?
I do love it. I just feel like I've seen it whatever 4 or 5 times versus like I didn't for some reason it was never in my constant rotation.
That's so crazy to me. I think it's a perfect movie, deeply flawed, but a perfect movie.
That's the weird magic of it. You're like, this movie's weird. And yet everything makes sense and works and feels very satisfying.
Lorraine has
it's that exact
no real
balance.
storyline except she's going to dodge sexual assault the whole movie. There's 4 attempts to assault her in a 2-hour movie.
Bullshit.
For
and
children.
Also she's thirsty for her son. Thirsty for her son on me.
Yes, and she's thirsty for her. Yeah, it's a wild movie, but like I wouldn't change a thing.
No, there was that thing going around Twitter, however long ago, of like name 4 perfect movies. And Back to the Future is such a good example of a movie you can say is perfect, but also can criticize deeply. But it's just like fundamentally in conversation with itself, it works so perfectly.
Yeah, it really does because you can explain away a lot of it. Like the sexual assaults, sure, it was the 50s. People were poorly behaved.
Right.
She's got the hots for her son. How the fuck is she supposed to know that this little cutie who came to town is her son?
And he's cute.
Not her fault.
He's a little cutie.
And he's got megawatt charisma.
Yeah, and he's got 80s energy. He's got like
and then he
he's
saves her from assaults. But then he plans to assault her. You know, it's a fun movie.
But then her future husband actually saves her from assault.
Yes. It is funny at the end of the movie when she's like, help, help. And that redhead is like dragging her away. And you're like, man, she's overreacting. As a kid, that's what I thought. As an adult, I was like, no, this is the 4th attempt. And she's just like, no, not again.
She's had a horrible week.
Yeah.
Now, David has like
Griffin
on record said
you're trying to turn me into the villain
you're
of this
upset.
show. Okay, go ahead.
No, that like you were never very hot on Back to the Future 2. That it was really just the first one for you. And I feel like you do, Nicole, where I'm like the first one is perfect, but this like 2 was kind of my movie in terms of my excitement hitting.
It is
a fever
wild.
pitch. It's so fun and wild and creative and such a bug nuts approach to making a sequel that I just think as a kid I get so excited watching it because I'm like, I can't believe they're doing this. Even though I know 1 is better, the ambition of 2.
2 is very ambitious. Also, as a kid, I was like, I can't wait for 2015. And then 2015 came.
Yes.
We didn't fucking get flying cars.
No.
There was no hoverboard.
No
I
magic
still have to
clothes.
bend over to tie my fucking shoelaces. Mad about it.
Yeah.
It's also one of those things where like everyone had the checklist, I feel like, of like run 2015 against Back to the Future 2015. What don't we have? What's failed to come true? This sucks. The future is awful. And now I'm like, all I want is to go back to 2015. 2015 sounds fucking rad. We didn't know how good we had it.
2015 was a nice year. Our last year of Obama before we got our our own Biff Tanner or Tannen
Yes.
as a president.
Yes. Right. America had a properly set up pandemic task response team.
Yeah, it's bad, but you know what? I think things are gonna pick up in October. Please don't ask me why October, because my theory doesn't really make sense when I say it out loud.
Wait, you think
But this
in
episode
1
will
week,
come out in like 2 or 3
right?
weeks.
Like
Yeah.
it's just gonna start turning around because I love that
And
theory.
I think it's gonna be great. I think the back end of this year for everybody's gonna be real nice.
I mean,
I love
I
it.
love that theory. I'm actually kind of all in that theory. Like, what else am I gonna do? Think it's gonna be
Yeah.
worse? Like, what's that
Yeah.
doing for me?
Start thinking good
It's the
thoughts
Griffin Newman approach.
for October, and it's gonna happen. We have to have magical thinking.
Right.
I think that's a book I read. Whatever.
Sure, Joan Didion. Magical
Yes,
thinking,
Joan
yes.
Didion.
Right. Yes, Back to the Future too, Griffin.
David-
Yes.
Oh,
no.
yes.
Go ahead. I mean,
No, I want to hear because I don't want to
was-
I don't want to make you into too much of a heel. I don't want to present you too much as the Biff. I want to hear your
because I like
history
this movie.
with this movie.
I remember when I was watching it. I again have not seen it that many times. I've still seen it a few times. I remember once being at a sleepover where we watched it twice.
Ooh,
And
that's a nice sleepover.
I
Perfect
know. I
sleepover.
think we watched it twice because like it was kind of fun the second time. We must have been 10 or 11 years old, like to puzzle it out better. You know what I mean? Like the first time it's sort of overwhelming. The second time you can better see how it all fits together. I remember that. I remember being very upset that Biff I was very upset by Biff. Biff really disturbed me when I was a kid.
Yeah, he's bad.
He is bad.
Really bad. No good.
And he disturbs me now, but now I kind of appreciate that. Like, I love that performance. I think Thomas Wilson's really funny in this movie. Like, he's kind of the
So good.
he's kind of the MVP of this one for me. Is that a wild opinion? That's not a wild opinion, right?
No, I think he is.
Yeah, I don't think that's a
like-
wild opinion.
You think that's that fully wild opinion? Because I like
No,
Griff.
I think it's not.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, because Griff, what he's doing
Yeah.
with Griff is weird. Like, you know, everyone else is
Yeah.
kind of doing like Griff is a whole new take on. I guess he's still aggro.
He's still aggro, but he's like weird aggro, and I appreciate it. I appreciate that performance more than Michael J. Fox's performance as his son. His son
Yeah.
was too dopey. I was like, what is wrong with you?
Really dopey. Really dopey.
Very
I
dopey.
forgot how dopey he was.
Yeah, and he's just like, oh, Dad, my sleeves are too long.
Right.
Like he's walking down the street like he's never seen a street or people before.
he's the most clueless kid who's
Yes.
ever lived. Yeah.
But I do love Back to the Future so much, and it does have. I like that it has that weird kind of heart to it, and I like that it has that whole take that you're talking about, Nicole, which I went on about in our last episode, that like the 50s were far seedier and nastier than you might remember, right? Like I feel like that's a lot of what that movie's about. This movie, I think, is all it's bananas. It's a Rube Goldberg machine where all this crazy stuff is lining up in all this fun way. But I don't know what I'm rooting for in this movie except for them to just unfuck all the mistakes they made, right? Like what's this movie like? Who am I sort of who do I love in this movie?
Are you kidding?
Okay, well,
Marty
come on.
and
Yeah,
Doc.
Well, they're great. I
Yeah,
love
two
those
of the best
two
people
guys.
to ever live.
That's who you're rooting for. You're rooting for Marty from 1985 and Doc from 1985.
They're great
Yeah.
people. I think they're super cool. But basically they like make a crazy mistake. They have to fix it. and they fix it. And it's great. It's fun.
Well, Marty just makes the mistake.
Right,
So
Doc
Doc
actually
brings him to the future to be like, your dopey ass son gets in trouble. Let's try to like not get this idiot in trouble. So they do that. And then the almanac, like that's Marty being a little selfish and showing that he is a
Having that
flawed
moment.
hero.
I would have that fantasy too if I was Marty. I sympathize with that. I would.
Do you?
I would think about
Doc has
that.
gone on and on and on about you can't know too much about your future, and you know it's not for personal gain. It's purely just to be like, oh boy, we're on safari
David's
in
a
the
gambler,
future.
though.
Right.
That's
Right.
what it comes down to.
I do like to gamble.
David's got that. He's got the bug.
I do like to gamble, but you know, it's
Do you
also.
like slots?
I don't love slots. I'm more of like I like poker and craps and like table. I like the social like weirdness of like casino gambling.
Whereas I'm a video slots guy.
Yeah,
You
Griff just
are?
likes the slots. Yeah.
Last time I was in Vegas, I was blacked out sitting at a slot machine, just like hitting the button. And I looked at my friend and I was like, that's how they get you to just keep playing. You just you keep playing, you keep hitting the button. And then a man walked by and went, you didn't put any money in.
It was on like demo
Never
mode.
laughed harder. It was just like the example mode where like it just kind of goes. So then I was just hitting the button. I was this is what you do.
There's only two ways
That's
that story was
actually,
going to
I mean,
end.
the best way to gamble.
Right. It was
Yeah.
either going to end with you not having put money in or you winning $1 million.
No, can't win anything if you didn't put nothing in.
That's true.
Ah, the phone's ringing. Click. It's a big answer from me. Whoa. Okay. Hello. What's up? Who are you? Why are you here?
My name used to be Alex Murphy.
You're a Robert cop.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore?
No. That institution is rotten from the head down.
Oh, the Omnicorp, the Detroit police.
I've pivoted. Call me Robo Masseuse.
Oh, I see. So you've pulled out a device. You've got these sort of panels in your robotic body.
Where
But
did it come out of? David, tell them where it came out of.
I mean, it looks like it's coming out of your leg, your right leg, where your gun used to be.
Now I have a Theragun.
Right, because the stress of daily life weighs on us all. Muscle pain, muscle tension, that's a real thing, whether you're an athlete or a regular person just trying to get through the day.
People are so creaky, they're walking around like they're Robert Cop.
Well, I have one of those, although mine is just, in my house. It's not in my leg. But it's a handheld percussive therapy device. It releases your deepest muscle tension using a scientifically calibrated combination of depth, speed, and power. And it's as quiet as an electric toothbrush. You just push this thing into your, your shoulders, or like my shoulders are what's always bugging me, but any part of your body. And it really soothes them.
It's quieter than me walking.
Yes, it is quieter than that, for sure. Yeah, because the all-new Gen 4 Theragun has a proprietary brushless motor that's so quiet you will wonder if it's on while you soothe your aching muscles with its signature power, amplitude, and effectiveness. You will know that it's on because you feel it, because it really goes to work. You can kind of adjust how powerful you want it to be, but it can be pretty powerful. But it's a very easy to use thing. You just put it right on yourself. So you're just walking around doing this?
I'm walking around massaging people, saying, come quietly or there will be soreness.
I do hope you're just making sure everyone wants to be massaged before you do that.
Of course, I give them the option, and then I say, your move, creep.
Okay, well, you can try Theragun risk-free for 30 days. There's no substitute for the Theragun Gen 4 with an OLED screen, personalized Theragun app, and the quiet and power you need. It starts at only $199, and if you go to Theragun.com/check right now, you can get your Gen 4 Theragun today. That's Theragun.com/check. Theragun.com/check. You can try it for 30 days.
See, this is my whole thing. You asked David in the last episode, why do you think this franchise resonated with you so much as a kid?
Yeah.
Because I care about Back to the Future at large beyond just the first movie. And I was like thinking about, because I didn't have an answer at the time. And I think the things that really resonate with me are that it is such a character-based franchise. Most of the other major movie franchises are so much about the universe, the lore, the sort of like alternate reality. A lot of the stuff that you cover on Newcomers, Nicole, is like the types of franchises like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings that you've always been somewhat resistant to, where you're like, I don't want to learn a language and a bunch of different species and a different timeline or a different alternate universe or planet or whatever. And I'm a dork and I like that stuff. But Back to the Future feels pretty unique to me in that it is so much a franchise about these characters and the relationships between them, and that it's about the ripple effects of the decisions that they make. Like all the travels they do, all the wild things that happen are so much defined by those little decisions, you know?
Can I
things
say
like Marty
something?
buying the almanac. Yes.
So Paul Rust, do you know Paul Rust? He's a comic, he's an actor,
Of course,
he's really
we
fun.
love Paul Rust. He's the
So-
funniest.
We were talking about Back to the Future at this job we were doing, and he was like, I think kids love Back to the Future because everyone has that fantasy of saving their parents' marriage or like making their parents happy. And Back to the Future 1 and 2 are definitely about Marty trying to save his family.
Right.
That's the other
He's
thing for me.
trying to
so
like
it's
preserve the family
yeah.
unit too.
And
He's
I
trying to
think
like
that's
make
why
a happy
kids love it.
family. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's a great call. I think the other fundamental thing this franchise is about is like your relationship to your parents in that way. And your fear of like, in which ways do I want to be like my parents and in which ways do I want to be the opposite of my parents? It's so much about that, like trying to outrun the legacy of your ancestors, but also like define a future for yourself. And I feel like this movie digs into all of that. You're asking David what it's about other than like just its fun sort of riffs and puzzle construction. But it is so much about, as Nicole said, like Marty keeps on making these decisions that actively make things worse. Like he comes into this movie cocky because he nailed the first Back to the Future
He did such a
movie.
great job. And he
sewed
comes
that shit up
back to the
so
present.
tight.
Everything's great. Right. Everything's perfect.
Right.
His parents are happy. His siblings are happy. All that. Yeah.
And I think a key detail that the movie kind of glosses over is that Doc has been gone for who knows how long. Like he flies off and then he shows up in Marty's parking, his garage with the future time machine. But we don't know in Doc Brown's life how long he's been traveling around to different times.
Sure.
He has that suitcase with all the different denominations. He knows all about future technology. And he seems to have a much stronger sense of the rules of time travel and paradox and cause and effect and all this sort of stuff.
His car takes garbage.
Yeah,
Which
it's eco-friendly. We still don't have that.
But he knows everything. Like he's able to explain everything going on around him.
You know
Doc
what
has no arc in this movie.
Doc, yeah, I guess Doc doesn't really have an arc in this movie.
3 is his movie.
Yes, 3 is his movie, but I didn't need it set in the Wild Wild West.
You're just
didn't
out
need
on
it.
that. You don't want a Western.
Yeah. I didn't want a Western. But then, that being said, I will watch it if it's on TV. My favorite part about Doc returning is, so Jennifer comes, Marty's looking at this car that he, fucking loves, and his parents are, looking at him lovingly in the house, and then they turn around and leave, and then an old man comes in a crazy car, and they fly away with their son. That's, so funny to me.
Perfect ending.
And they're just in the house.
Yeah,
will they notice that Marty's gone? Well, do they see the flying car? What?
No, only Biff sees
What's
it.
happening with Crispin Glover and homegirl? What's her name?
Leah Thompson.
Leah
Yes,
Thompson.
Leah Thompson.
The best.
The absolute best. Biggest crush for me when I was a kid.
Biggest movie crush possibly of all time. Biggest thing to define early while talking about this movie is the Crispin Glover of it all, which has had so many different stories in terms of what happened, but he is not in this movie. Gale and like Zemeckis have always claimed that he asked for too much money. And so they balked and were like, well, we'll offer him the same amount we're offering Leia Thompson and Tom Wilson rather than the amount we're offering Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, which is what he asked for. And he'll like break in a couple weeks. He'll come back to the negotiating table and agree to do it for the smaller amount. And that never happened. Crispin Glover's always contended that that wasn't what happened, that it was more of like a philosophical thing and he had disagreements with them creatively.
Right. He says he doesn't like the ending of Back to the Future because he doesn't like that them being happy is just them being rich. I get that.
But it's this yuppie fantasy. It's the car. It's the book deal. It's the nicer house. It's all material.
But also, he probably did ask for more. It's probably some combo. Like, he probably was pissed off about it, but if they'd paid him enough, he would have done it. Because that's that's life in Hollywood, right? Like, but I believe him that he was like, this is corny, that all that I get is to be rich at the end of the movie.
But he's also like, he's a weird guy.
He's
they
odd.
talk about how hard it was to work with him on the first movie because he just sort of is on a different wavelength.
Yeah.
I think after the first movie, he has the Letterman appearance where he starts kicking shit.
Wait,
Like, he had
what?
developed a reputation. He went on Letterman and started high kicking.
What? That's wild. Then he did that movie with a rat, Willard.
He
I've
did.
never seen it.
Yes.
Has anyone seen
Willard.
it?
I have seen
Rules.
Willard's
It's so
fun.
good.
Yeah, Willard's
What is
cool.
it about? It's about a man who loves a rat.
Wait,
loves a
I
lot of
should
rats.
see this.
It's about a man.
It sounds
He
good.
loves so many rats. Yes. Oh, it's so good. Do you know the Michael Jackson song Ben, Nicole?
Ben. I don't think so.
Gentle
It
Ben.
was
about
Michael Jackson's first solo song, I think. It's like a ballad.
Oh,
that he's
yeah.
singing
Do you know it?
to
Sing
his
it
dear
for me.
friend Ben. Ben, the two of us were no more. It's something like that.
Okay.
And we'll find what we are looking for. Like, it's like
you
that.
know it. Uh-huh.
Singing. I know it. That song is the ballad from a 70s movie called Ben, which is a sequel to the original Willard that the Crispin Glover Willard is a remake about a lonely guy whose only friends are rats, who he uses to attack people who are mean to him.
That's wild.
And it's got this song that gets repurposed all the time because Michael Jackson was such a famous artist. And people view it as like this big like love ballad. And it's a song being sung from a grown man to a rat. And then the Crispin Glover remake sort of folds in the two original movies. So it has a cover of Ben in it that I want to say maybe Crispin Glover sings himself. But the movie is also about Ben, the rat, leading a revolution against Willard because he thinks they're not treating the rats with enough respect. So then the rats end up attacking Willard in the last third of the movie. It rules.
That honestly sounds truly wild and a
So
real
good.
treat, and I might watch it.
Absolutely watch it.
Griff, or I just read about, I forgot. So I just watched him kick Letterman. He doesn't kick him in the face, but he's inches away. He basically
He comes really close to kicking
Right.
David Letterman in the head.
he stands up and is like, I'm strong, I can kick, and does like a high kick. And Letterman is just
Yes.
like, all right, and gets up and walks off. And then they cut to commercial. So clearly Letterman's
Wow.
like not into it. And then they cut back to Letterman and Crispin Glover is gone. And Crispin Glover has never explained this, basically, right? Like he's never really accounted for this.
Wow, to
He's
be
always
a
like,
fucking
I'm a
insane
performance
person.
artist.
Right.
Right.
I wonder-
He's one of those people who's just like, I like to push boundaries. People can't handle what I'm doing.
What is Crispin Glover's net worth?
Let's find out. I can Google.
Also, is Crispin his government name?
I all but certain. His father was also a weirdo actor who played like a James Bond henchman
Is that right?
and then became an acting teacher. So I'm pretty sure Crispin is his legal birth name because his father was kind
Not
of
only
a
is it his legal
hippie
birth
radical.
name, his middle name is Hellion.
Hellion.
Which is
What?
pretty crazy.
Crispin Hellion Glover.
Crispin Hellion Glover.
That's
what
right.
a wild man.
His
Is
net
he
worth-
married?
It's a great question. He is.
He's never been
Not
married.
married.
I feel like he's dated a lot of like burlesque models.
Yeah, he dated some like penthouse pets of the month. He lives in the Czech Republic in like a castle.
Whoa.
Honestly, the more I'm
Yes.
learning about this man is very funny. He's a real dream. What
And
a
his-
wild man.
His net worth, if you Google it, is put at $3.5 million, which is plenty of money, but it's not like
I figured he would have a little bit more, but also
Right.
who knows?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the other wrinkle to that, Nicole. He's certainly made a lot of money in his career. He openly says that when he takes big jobs, things like the Charlie's Angels movies, it is solely to then finance his own films. He has directed 2 movies that have a cast almost entirely made up of mentally handicapped people
Okay.
that are like very subversive and transgressive. And he builds his own sets and
Okay.
self-finances the movies entirely, and then goes around and screens them with one print, reading poetry before and after the screenings. I've seen him do it once.
Honestly, I'm
It's
here for it.
very
I
bizarre.
really like it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
but he's absolutely a guy who spends millions of dollars making his own movies.
He has dated some stunning women.
Yeah, I'm looking at his 17 bedroom Czech estate right now, and
How wild.
it's pretty nice looking. I mean, for a 17, you hear 17 bedroom Czech estate. It's what you'd imagine. Ooh, it's got some frescoes. I'm gonna.
What's a
forward this to you.
fresco?
Where they just painted a painting right onto the wall, no frame, it's just art right
look
on the
at that.
wall.
Yeah.
Which is probably a pain in the ass.
He's got a
to,
fridge full
maintain.
of got a fridge full of frescoes too. I'm
He
noticing.
does. He
here. I'm
loves
seeing a
fresco,
photo.
right?
Loves fresco.
I don't think I've had a fresca.
Oh, you'd
Fresco's
love it. You'd
the
love
one that it's not fizzy, right?
Willard.
It is fizzy, and people on planes ask for it a lot. Can I have a fresca or a Coke Zero?
Fresca's like Sprite if it tasted more like actual fruit.
Oh, interesting. I think
That's
I'm
how
here
I
for
describe
that.
it. It's a little more natural tasting. The thing I want to say though is Zemeckis goes off very quickly, starts working on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is a years-long project with all the technology they need to develop. But Universal wants Back to the Future 2, immediately. So they go, if Fox and Lloyd are on board, we're down to do it. And Fox and Lloyd go, sure. And they go, great. Start brainstorming Back to the Future 2. So from what I gather, Bob Gale writes a full draft of Back to the Future 2 by himself without Zemeckis first.
Yeah.
While Zemeckis is on Roger Rabbit, he's like, you try something, come back to me, show me what it is.
The screenplay is only credited to Bob Gale.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Zemeckis only has a story credit.
But the big key is they knew they had to do the future at the beginning because of the end of the first movie.
Right.
But originally, the premise was not going back into the second film. The premise was Marty goes back to the 60s because there's another disruption to him and his siblings being born, in that it's Lorraine and George in college, and Lorraine is a hippie radical who goes to jail. And I think George is maybe pro-military, and he has to get his parents to conceive.
That sounds lame.
That was the original script was. It's him trying to get his parents to fuck.
Ugh.
And also that
I
kind of
don't
sounds
want that.
That sounds like what he ends up doing with Forrest Gump. That's kind of what Forrest Gump is about,
Yes.
right? It's about the 60s
Totally.
and
Yes.
hippies and the war
Forrest
and all
Gump
that. Right.
Is one of the wildest movies that would
is.
never get made today.
If you made it today, you would go to
You'd be
jail.
put in jail.
That you would go straight to
Bananas.
jail.
You go to jail
But
right away.
that being said, E plays Forrest Gump on loop during Christmas, and I will watch Forrest Gump 4 times in a row, no problem.
Wow.
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 I love Forrest Gump, and it's a terrible movie.
Yeah, I mean, we're about to rewatch it. I have not seen it since I was 8.
Really?
I'm very curious to see how it plays.
I've
yeah.
truly
In my
seen
head,
it maybe
not well.
100 times. I love Forrest Gump. Last time I got very drunk on a plane, I was watching Forrest Gump, and I was 3 inches from the monitor, and I was just like, oh, Forrest, you're so silly. I
He's
love
quite a
Forrest
man.
Gump.
He is silly. He's very silly.
So that's the script that Gale writes by himself. And then they realize, we're not going to have Crispin Glover. So they go back to the drawing board in terms of rethinking. We have to make a Back to the Future 2 that doesn't really revolve around George. So they make the leap to, it should be about the absence of George. That defines the story. And then Zemeckis is the one who has the idea and says to Gale, like, we're in a position that no one has ever been in before, which is we can make a sequel where we go back into the first movie. That was Zemeckis's big, like, clever idea, and said, I want you to write to that, which I think is the other main thing this movie is about, David. It's about sort of like, as you said, Nicole, trying to keep your family together. You know, these series of decisions you make, the ripples they have onto everyone around you, trying to define your legacy, you know, live up to your ancestors or outpace them and find the future you want for yourself. But the other thing it's about is the difficulty of making a sequel. Not to get meta here, but I feel like this movie is explicitly about the audience expectations for a sequel to a film that everyone loves, because it starts out like cashing in the exact thing that was promised to the audience that everyone got excited by. Where we're going, we don't need roads. Holy shit, what's this place gonna look like? First 30 minutes, just fucking balls to the wall future. Every technology you ever want to see, you repeat the classic bits from the first movie. It's like the fucking second beat of a Herald. You do the diner again. You do the skateboard chase again. Like, it's just perfect sequel, like same thing but different shit.
Right. 100%.
So then you get to Act 2, and Act 2 is everything's bad. Everything's bad. They fucked everything up. They tried to give you the exact movie you thought you wanted to see, and it ruined everything. It didn't ruin the future. It ruined the status quo, the happy ending from last time. This is a disaster. It's so bleak. It's so depressing. So then Act 3 of the movie is like, fuck it. We just need to remake the first movie again. Like, we tried doing something different. Audiences don't want different. We have to go back and do the exact same thing all over again. And the fact that it's literally Marty from like different angles of the same scenes trying to reorchestrate, making things just 10% different while also making sure the scenes largely play out the same is, I think, explicitly Zemeckis, who's a guy who like otherwise didn't do sequels, making a movie about the impossible position of like, what do you do if everyone thinks they know what they want out of your movie? If you are kind of handcuffed as a filmmaker into those expectations.
That's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good take. And so, but then the take on 3 is like, and then 3 is Zemeckis being like, it'd be nice to make a Western. Right?
That's the other thing. Yes.
That's like the opposite of the high stakes stuff you're talking about, where he's like, well, yeah, what is it to make a sequel to this movie?
Maybe it was so much of a headache to do too that they were like, let's let it breathe. Let's put it so far away from the first two that like you can't even get back into the first two.
Right.
I'm about to blow your minds. This is what's so wild. The only reason 3 exists is because Zemeckis loves the Wild West and he wanted to make a Western homage, right? They clearly just shoehorned the Back to the Future franchise into this genre that he likes so he could like play in that sandbox. I also saw some behind the scenes interview from 1985 with Michael J. Fox where they ask him like, if you had a time machine for real, where would you go? And he's like, Wild West, I love cowboys. So I think everyone involved just liked Western movies and thought it would be fun to do a Western movie.
I mean,
the Wild West
hate it.
was originally Act 3 of Back to the Future 2. They wrote one script that was 185 pages.
Right.
Wait, really?
Yes.
I mean,
that's the wild thing.
Right.
So
I could see that.
They wrote a script that was 2015.
Right.
Then they go to the
old
alternate
movie, right.
1985 high.
Damn.
No, they weren't going to go to the old movie.
They weren't going to do the old movie.
It was going to be, they have to go back to the Wild West, I think, in order to correct it. It was going to be like future hellscape, alternate present, Old West, I think.
I'm really glad they didn't do that
long.
In the second movie. That would just be too much. Because the second, like, Back to the Future 2 is almost too much. Right. It is almost
it's very
like,
overwhelming.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like just enough.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it would be.
It's like a maximalist movie,
Right.
but it could not handle anymore. Spielberg is the one who said, this is too long. You can't film this. If you guys want to make a Wild West movie, just make it 2 films. We can shoot them back to back.
Right.
It was sort of the first modern movie to do that, where Back to the Future 1 had been so big that they were like, you can make 2. The audience is there. Shoot them at the same time. We're all good. But that's the other reason why 3 feels so light, because 3 is essentially what was meant to be a third act stretched for an entire movie.
3 has no stakes, like zero stakes. It's just a fun time.
3 is just a like Doc Brown romance movie.
Yes.
But I don't hate it. I like seeing Doc happy.
Right.
Gentleman 6, you love these characters. You like to see them have fun.
3 is a fun Lloyd showcase. Like that's great for him. Like it's fun to see. But it also, Griff, like what you're talking about makes sense to me. But it's also the first movie has such specific stakes, and the car can't be used except if you have lightning or nuclear, right? Like you can barely use the car.
Right.
And in the second one, it's like, okay, now we got the car and we can do whatever we want. So let's take it for a spin.
The car does everything now.
And it can fly, right? It can catch you. It can be part of every set piece. And it's kind of like exhausting intentionally. Like if you really had a freaking flying car that could go back and forward in time, like, yeah, you would exhaust yourself. You'd probably mess everything up. It's too much power, right? Like that's kind of what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only one of the 3 that's like really primarily a time travel movie.
Right.
Like a movie that is about time travel. The first one is a movie where he gets stuck in the past in order to tell the story they want to tell, which is, what if you were the same age as your parents?
Right.
The third movie is this love story in the Old West in which they have to get back to the present at the very, very end. This one is like, fuck it. We had a huge hit. We're going to have whatever budget we want. He's like pioneered all these groundbreaking effects with Roger Rabbit. So he comes back to the table wanting to show off all these new tricks he's learned. But it's very much the movie that's like, let's just do everything you could do with a flying time traveling car. Let's just do all the shit, which I think is part of the joy, is that it's like so fucking jam-packed.
So do you want to talk about some specific stuff in the movie, Griff? Scene by scene? Is there stuff you want to get into?
Yeah, right off the bat, they lose the actress Claudia Wells, who played Jennifer in the first movie.
Yeah,
because her mom got sick and she just decided she didn't want to act.
Right.
She just quit acting?
She just quit acting. She just like quit acting.
Oh, okay.
She now owns like an Armani store in Los Angeles and does a lot of conventions.
Okay.
Fair enough.
But she just went like completely off the grid. And unlike George, where they could write around him, write him out, reuse footage, put someone else in makeup, they were like, well, the end of the first movie is fucking Jennifer getting in the car with Doc Brown and Marty. We have to do something. I do feel like Elizabeth Shue's a good actress in general. Her performance in this is so broad, but also the character is so thankless in terms of all Jennifer does in this movie is faint.
The movie is immediately like, can we get rid of her? Like, you know, like it just has that, like, let's just knock her out.
They leave her in an alleyway.
They leave her in the garbage. They like throw her in the garbage.
They just keep putting her, like put her in a closet, put her on a street corner, put him in a dumpster. She just keeps fainting and they keep leaving her incapacitated in different places, which it's not. That's their fault for making that series of decisions. It's kind of a glorping on a major scale where it's just like, how do we not deal with this character? But there's also the problem of like, when you recast it and you have a new actress who looks entirely different, has a different energy.
No, she doesn't. They look exactly the same. I didn't clock it.
When I was a kid,
Really?
I
No.
definitely did not realize
I didn't know it was a different girl until today when my roommate was like, oh, that's Elizabeth Shue, because we watched Avengers and Babysitting last night and I didn't know who Elizabeth Shue was. And he was like, that's the lady from Adventures in Babysitting. I was like, oh, I didn't know she was in the Back to the Futures. And he's like, no, just this one. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, she replaced the original actress. And I was like, huh, okay. They look exactly the same to me.
I always found it super glaring. But Shue was also like a bigger deal at this point.
because of
Karate
Adventures
Kid
in
had come
Babysitting,
out.
Karate Kid, right? Yeah.
And Adventure Babysitting,
That's true. She is. She's a hot property, but this is a hot sequel, right? I mean, I don't know. Cocktail was the year before, I think, and she's the love interest.
Like kind of a movie star
Cocktail.
on her own right. Yeah.
But she's fine. But yeah, no, it just sucks that they or whatever. They just don't know what to do with her. It feels like they are like, shit, we like wrote that she got in the car. Like, I guess we have to, like it's only that. Because they want to have a Marty and Doc adventure. That's what they want to have. That's what they want the sequel to be.
But I bring this up only because it adds the weird layer with the first scene of the movie being a shot-for-shot remake of the ending of the last movie. They can't reuse it because they have a different actress.
Right.
So it feels like people have done the side-by-side compilations. It's like them trying to match their line readings almost identically, the same shots, the same timing, but it's all just recreated which the whole last third of the movie ends up being. And then you go to 2015, which just fucking rules. And I said this to you, David. I feel like this is still like the vision of the future in pop culture that people use as a reference point most. And in that way, Nicole, what you were saying of like when 2015 came around, people kept on talking about how disappointed they were. Like it was so fixed in people's brains. That's the year we're going to have all this
spiky
technology
metal
by this
helmet
year.
that anyone can just wear. Like, I was ready for it.
I mean, I would want it.
You can do that, Ben. Okay. Nicole will buy one.
Yeah, I'll buy one. We can wear them together. We'll be two little spiky helmeted people.
All that stuff is just so fun.
I love his whole look. I love the fun, like you say, that they're having Griffin where you go back to the diner, you know, you have all those kinds of jokes. But like, I like the differences. Like, Griff is just, it's like bullies in the future will be like hyper bullies. Like it'll just be like, they'll be like double the bully. They'll be like on coke or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like that everything in the future is just sort of louder and more colorful and more ridiculous, like in good ways and bad. Like, wait, what's the Jaws sequel? Like Jaws 19 or what? I can't remember the number now.
Yeah, Jaws 19. It's really, really real, I think is the tagline.
It's really, really personal. That's what it is.
Right.
It's the most personal. And it's like credited as being directed by Spielberg's son.
Oh, that's fun.
That is funny.
The shark still looks fake. I do like, I mean, we're like talking about Tom Wilson arguably being the MVP of this movie. His take on Griff is that he's like a short-circuiting cyborg. Like there are obviously all these things. Like there's that moment where he grows taller, but even just the way he speaks and moves his body, it's like he's a robot that's been like doused in water, where he just keeps on going like, McFly, I don't know what you're like.
So
everything
weird.
is like.
But also you have to remember that Biff is his dad. Imagine Biff was your dad. You would be fucked up too.
Yeah, he's fucked
Who's
up.
his mom?
He's
also,
probably
like,
glitching because he's been hit so many times.
right. I guess.
Or but no, Biff's his
Yeah,
grandfather.
yeah.
Griff's
who
his
still
grandpa.
fucking
Right.
hits him with a cane.
So wait, Biff's his grandfather. So yeah, who's his dad?
Yeah, who did Griff?
Drift?
Yeah, Drift, right. Briff.
Who
I don't
fucked
know.
Biff? Actually,
the worst.
He's
The worst. This is the thing I was arguing I like to David is that 2 is where they start to like heighten Biff into being like a cosmic force
Right,
of
he's,
evil.
like, elemental.
Like the idea that just like right at any point in time there is a Tannen who represents the worst of all humanity. There's always a Tannen. Yeah.
yeah. Is this the one where they are absolutely like he is Donald Trump? Like, or what, did they have the Trump concept from the
Yes.
beginning? Or it's this one where he's a mogul?
It's 100%
right?
Trump.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's explicitly like, I mean, the hair is near identical minus the sideburns. And it is, I mean, it's one of those things. I feel like Gale and Zemeckis have to talk about this in interviews all the time now. But they were like, Donald Trump was the example of the grossest kind of person at that point in the late 80s. So we just thought it'd be funniest if like that's the kind of tacky billionaire that he would be, not ever thinking it was possible that kind of guy could become president. Like they stopped themselves at Biff can't be elected to higher office.
Right, he's just a rich guy.
Right. It's just that strains credibility. There's no way he would be elected.
It's just so funny that he is our president, knowing that everyone has seen this movie.
Right.
Right, the whole
You know,
world
it's like,
saw
we don't
this
want
movie.
this. This is bad. And we're like, give it to us. We're going to elect it. We want this.
They warned us in a very popular movie that people like.
Yeah.
I always talk about, too, there's this Sesame Street TV special. It was like the 30th anniversary of Sesame Street or something that was about Donald Trump buying Sesame Street to tear it down and install a new building. And Joe Pesci played Donald Trump. Post-Oscar, it's Joe Pesci, and the character's name is Ronald Grunt, but they style him exactly like Trump in the
got
suit
the
and the
hair,
red tie
sure, right,
with the wig and the eyebrows. And I'm like, in 1992 or whatever, you could do a Sesame Street special where an Academy Award winner played this guy and everyone accepted that he was the villain, that he was a Biff-level cosmic evil. And then 20 years later, he got
It's so wild that like someone so stupid is our president. Whatever. We don't have to talk about it. But like in Hill Valley, when it's all shitty, the thing that like really got me is when Marty goes to his home, climbs in his window, and there's a little black girl in her bed. And I was like, oh, because it's a bad neighborhood, the black people now live in his house.
Yeah,
I was like, can we be a little bit more creative? Just have them be fucking hillbillies. They didn't have to be black. But then I was like, well, we didn't get any black people in the movie, so I guess I should be grateful.
Right. The only
You got Goldie Wilson.
You have Goldie Wilson. That's the only black character.
Yes.
But like, yes, the transformation of it into a bad neighborhood is pretty lame. The only thing is that then the whole city is just ruined. Like, so I guess it's all bad. Like, what did Biff do? Well, I like that it's dystopian, Griff, to be clear. I enjoy that it's, you know, ludicrously hellishly bad. But like, what the hell happened? Like, it's just that he like bought up all the property. Is that what he did?
I think it might be the same thing Trump has done, where he's given tax breaks. Oh wait, I guess he's not the president, so I don't. Yeah, I guess he just has this big hotel casino. It
just like sucks up all
It's and like people wasted their money and couldn't pay their mortgages, and then they're homeless and shooting each other in the streets. I loved I don't think it was a chalk outline. It was like a tape outline of bodies on the street.
Yes,
that made me laugh so hard. I was like, they left it there. They didn't take it away after they took the bot. They left it.
The other thing is when Marty's like outside the pleasure palace and there's the video playing of the museum, like how did Biff become the luckiest man in the world? You see the newspaper headlines of him buying off the government over and over again.
Sure.
There's like the idea that he's the one who bought off enough senators or whatever to get gambling legalized. You see that one of the businesses he started was toxic waste disposal. Like, it's just that he's this guy who's like reveled in the worst of humanity and has either made money off of doing things that like hurt the people around him or has paid off government officials to legalize the bad things he wants to do. So I think it's like, yeah.
He also dates Marilyn Monroe. And there's a picture of him with Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. And then he dates like other beautiful women. Then they're like, he settled down with the love of his life, Lorraine. I'm like, what's in Lorraine's pussy that this man is the richest man in the world?
He is
and
obsessed
was dating
with her.
Marilyn Monroe. And he's like, not for me. I gotta go get this lady from the 50s who didn't want me. I'm gonna put some titties in her. Like, what the fuck is? There has to be something in her pussy.
Like Donald Trump, right? We all agree the whole thing is just his dad not loving him. Like, everything is so clearly rooted in wanting his dad's approval. You can see with this type of person just being like, I never got over the fact that I was punched in the face while trying to sexually assault this woman.
Well, but beyond that also that, you know, he approaches her in the street as well, like that she like loudly rejects him, and he like she totally humiliates him anytime he's doing his awful, like, you're gonna be my, like, basically just grabbing her, like you say, Nicole.
Right. Like, he's humiliated by Lorraine and by George. And for a guy this simplistic, it makes sense that he'd just be like, cool, I will murder George and lock Lorraine into a loveless marriage.
It's so
like
weird movie.
Because it doesn't seem like, I mean, you see him in the hot tub with other women. Obviously, he's paid for her to get this breast job, but their romance, like, there's no romance left in their marriage. It doesn't even feel like they have a sexual relationship anymore. It literally just feels like he's like a dragon wanting to keep a woman locked in a tower.
Yeah.
You know? And
my favorite part in that scene is when Marty comes back and he's like by the vault or whatever, and he's, you know, talking about how an older man told him about the almanac, whatever. And then he was like, oh, your car hit the manure truck. And he's like, how do you know about that? And he's like, my dad told me. He's like, your dad? And he's like, before he died, he went, oh, okay. That made me laugh so hard because I was like, for a hot second, did Biff think a dead man told this kid something? It's such a funny choice.
In a flying car at this point. Yeah.
I also, like when he goes back and then you see Marty, like I also had the brain thing of like, wait, is he like supposed to still somehow be Lorraine's son with Biff? Like, but then no, right?
No, because George,
yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's
a big part of it. And I also, the other thing I like about that moment, Nicole, is it's like, well, the manure thing is really prevalent in Marty's mind because that happened to him yesterday, right? Or like 3 days ago. But the idea that Biff reacts so strongly,
He's never
it's
gotten
like,
over it.
even though this
Right.
thing was 30 years ago. Yeah, like I just like the idea that Biff is still haunted by the 5 days that Marty McFly was in the 50s. Like getting rejected by Lorraine, getting punched by George, getting manure dumped on him. Like his entire life has been like, I need to succeed to overcome that in this very Trumpian way. But once again, Zemeckis and Gale, you're like, well, how was he able to damage society this much? They had to argue it was just through his business dealings because their thought was there is no way someone this transparently ugly and boorish would ever be elected by a general populace.
Okay.
So instead, he's just a billionaire with a lot of influence.
Here's another question I have. A key thing in this movie is that Marty hates being called a chicken. He like goes wild if anyone calls him a chicken, and it basically like we sort of see like it kind of ruined his life because he like had this hand injury, right? Like he hurts himself. And he never gets over it.
He gets into a car crash and hurts
of the
his
car
hand. And
crash.
then
Crashing the car.
He gives up his music
Right.
career.
Yeah.
He never sends his stuff into the record labels.
Right.
Needles fucked him
Needles fucks him up. Is that all?
Yeah.
That's all new,
Yes.
right? Like and Needles is played by
Correct.
Flea, right?
Yes. All of it new. Needles is new. The chicken stuff is new. I remember
The
watching
chicken
this
stuff
movie
is
for the
not
first time as
new.
a kid.
Is it not? That's my question. Like
It's not in the first movie at
Yes,
all,
it
right?
is. I
When-
can't
that's what I don't
remember
remember.
the scene, but hold on. Let me Google it because I'm pretty
Because
sure.
we watched it
I'm
very recently.
You know what?
I know I've heard
pretty
Gail.
sure it's in the first movie.
now I'm finding it. Well, because there is a scene in the diner. It says Back to the Future Part 1. I guess Biff calls. Yes,
Yeah.
Biff calls him a chicken.
Yes.
Okay.
In that original like diner showdown where you have Crispin Glover and Biff is putting his paws on Leia Thompson and she slaps him. And that's when Marty gets in the fight with him. He doesn't react in the same like bananas
Right, yes.
way where he
Yes.
like just kind of like, sirens start going off in his head. But yes, it is in the first movie. That's what I was trying to remember. Thank you, Nicole. I couldn't
You're
remember if they
welcome.
made it up or like, but this movie, he does the thing
No,
where he's
it's
like,
just
nobody
amped
calls
up.
me chicken.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing I've heard Gail say in interviews is they realized Marty had no internal conflict whatsoever.
Right, 'cause Marty's
Like,
so
he's just kind of
busy.
the coolest kid.
Right. In the first
Right.
movie with all the time shit that he's barely that's how good Michael J. Fox is in these movies. Like Marty's just so inherently lovable. Like even though, right, you barely, he likes to play the guitar, right? Like that's about all we know about him.
Right.
And he hangs out with an old scientist.
He loves staying out with an old scientist, which I take as like his dad, he wants a dad. He wants like a proper dad.
He wishes his dad was an eccentric lunatic instead of a pathetic put upon man. But yes, the Marty, it's like one of the best movie star performances of all time in the first one because there's almost nothing to play there. He's almost entirely reactive, and he's just a guy who's pretty good at everything and pretty cool and charming at everything. Like it shouldn't work, but he's so good at reacting to people comedically, and he's just so charming that this one they were like, there has to be some like inner conflict within Marty. I guess they took the chicken thing, which he obviously doesn't react to in such a like nuclear way in the first movie, and made it like, oh, this is his entire Achilles heel. His kryptonite is calling him a chicken. You could get him to do anything and it will ruin his life. So that there was something for him to push against in a larger sense.
That's fine. Now, I appreciate that Marty has a little bit of an ego. That's cool. Like I'm cool with having a chip on his shoulder, but I think I prefer how Biff is so wild and different and dominant in the future and in the past. The Marty stuff, like it's like it should be more. Michael J. Fox should be more fun as all these other people, and I feel like, especially like old Marty, like he's just kind of a loser. Like it's kind of a repeat of the first. It's okay. I'm not as invested in all the Marty stuff. Is that crazy?
I mean, it's his fear of no. It happens pretty quickly. Like they don't live in it for too long. That whole big house sequence I feel like is mostly a showcase for the technology, which this is the first movie to really use like computer controlled cameras with actors playing against themselves. So that's the big breakthrough. Is it used to be if you had one actor playing two characters in one scene, you had to like have it be the exact same camera position without cuts, with a clear line or some object in the middle that was separating the two of them. And this, he has like camera movements and wild sort of things happening, objects interacting with each other, which a lot of it is shit he learned from Roger Rabbit, obviously, like having to shoot around two different elements and also how to like puppeteer props and stuff so that they can be carried over from one part of a frame to another between characters. But I feel like this is just him doing the like wowie gadgetry of it gives Michael J. Fox something fun to play. Right. He gets to do a bunch of different characters. B, right, I'm going to show off how like no one's ever seen something like this in a movie before. And they talk about like in the big family dinner scene, every single prop was like super glued down because the shots wouldn't work if anything was misaligned.
Right.
So they shot it over like a week where he was shooting the different parts with the camera hooked up to all these computers, so it would replicate the exact same timing and the same angles of the camera moves over and over again. And then the second to last day, there was an earthquake. And they were like, we fucked it up. It's like the whole thing's ruined. They had armed guards outside of the set overnight to make sure no one broke in and fucked with the set, because it would have cost them like millions of dollars. And then there was this earthquake, and they were like, God damn it. And they walked on and it was fine. It was like an act of God that the set was somehow fine. They shot the final day and finished it.
That's cool.
George being upside down in the like back harness
Right.
was because they thought Crispin Glover was going to retreat and agree to do the movie for less money. So they were like, oh, we'll punish him by making him do the whole movie hanging
That's
upside
rude.
down. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
so then
hilarious.
instead they just hire some lookalike actor to do an impression, and we're like, oh, by the way, you're going to have to be upside down for 10 days of filming.
Damn, that sucks. But then didn't Crispin, he sued them, right? And he won.
For a bunch of money.
Yeah, he's like,
Because
it's a classic image rights
Yeah.
case, basically. Right. He's like,
Right.
you can't use my face. Right? Like that's
Right.
sort
I
of
mean, the
part of
makeup
it.
was designed to look like
Right.
him. They have an impersonator from different angles doing some of the 1950s stuff. And then they also reuse some
Yeah,
footage
and,
of the
and
first
photos of him and stuff.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And he's just like, no,
Yeah.
that's not allowed. And now, like,
I think he made a good portion of his net worth from
Yeah, probably.
not being in this movie. Truly. Because it was a pretty open and shut case, and it defined the rest of the industry. Like,
Yeah.
it changed all the rules.
We got to thank Crispin Glover for getting paid for our likeliness.
yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that's cool. Now I'm sort of looking at Crispin Glover again.
I wonder if his nickname is Crisp
Crispy?
Professor
or like
Chris.
Crispy.
Yeah.
Crispy
Crispy.
gloves?
Come on, Crispy Gloves.
It is funny
Crispy
that
gloves,
they
baby.
do work. He does work with Zemeckis again one day in Beowulf. He did finally. They must
Yeah.
have made peace eventually.
Well, the other weird thing is when he talks about it in interviews, he's like, I have no problems with Bob Zemeckis. He's a gentleman. We worked together in Beowulf. I had a lovely time. I hate Bob Gale.
Oh, wow.
Bob Gale.
He hates the other guy. Okay.
Nicole has like very much been the like spokesperson for the franchise and the ambassador. He doesn't really make many things after Back to the Future. And so while Zemeckis goes on and does all these other things in his career, Gale has always been sort of like the steward, does all the interviews, does all the promotional appearances, like oversaw the animated series and the ride and all
There
that
was
sort
an
of stuff.
animated
And-
series?
oh yeah, I've been watching it and I enjoy it thoroughly. It's
Good
mostly
reaction. I
about
agree with that.
Doc Brown's kids.
There's like
It's
kids.
mostly about his two little
Right.
boys. Yes, Jules and Vern. They get into trouble.
Jules
his one
and
kid's
Vern?
a nerd. The other one is like a rebel Bart Simpson kid, and they get into trouble. And then Marty and
where
Doc
can
have
I
to
watch
follow
this?
them. It is. It must be streaming somewhere. I have it on DVD,
That's been Griffin. Griffin, you have it on
and I've
DVD.
been watching all of it at night. I have the DVD, the complete series, Back to the Future.
Wow, there's 2 seasons. Who knew?
2 seasons. Yeah.
Let's see. Where is it though?
Mary Steenburgen
Okay.
returns.
Sure.
Yes, and so is Thomas Wilson, Christopher Lloyd. But no,
Christopher Lloyd
Bill
does
Nye's in
live.
it.
Christopher Lloyd does live action. The beginning and end of every episode is Doc Brown live action in his lab, teaching science lessons that relate to the episode you're about to see. And Bill Nye does that.
That is
Christopher Lloyd doesn't do
literally
the voice.
insane.
It's Dan Castellaneta from The Simpsons does Doc Brown animated, and Christopher Lloyd does like 8 minutes live
It's
action
not
per episode.
streaming. You would have to buy the DVD, which is only available used, but for like $10.
Also, it says on the Wikipedia that it's a French-American animated science fiction comedy. What do you mean French-American?
Griffin, please explain. Is it French?
I guess it must have been like a French production company.
Oh.
Here, wait, let me hold this up.
It
does say
nobody can
it's-
see it.
Virtual background.
Oh, okay,
see
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah, okay.
Where you see the cartoon versions of everybody.
All right.
But yes, that series is very much like every time they're like, oh no, my kids have escaped to the Civil War.
Oh, no.
And they have to like follow the kids. And then there's like General Beauregard Tannen, and they're like, oh no, Biff's a Confederate. And then
Oh, and it takes
every
place
episode's
after
like that.
Back to the Future 3. So that's why Mary Steenburgen's in it, because he's with his wife, Clara. Oh, and it's
But it's
his
also
sons, Jules and
wild.
Vern. I get
His
it.
sons. It's wild that she's the one who was like, yeah, I'll do all the episodes, considering that she was a fucking Academy Award winner.
Well, maybe she really responded to the material.
Claire's a great character. Anyway, that's the wild thing I've been watching. But Glover's always been very anti-Gale. He's like, Gale keeps on spreading false rumors about me and how difficult I was. I don't like him. I don't respect
So
him.
there's forever beef on that
yes.
front. But whatever. They're not making any more Back to the Future, so all
But
good.
I wish they
No,
would.
that's-
I
Maybe they
want
will.
another
Well,
one.
I suppose it's not impossible.
This is the other thing. It's Back to the Future is in that like last time period where they made deals like this, where Bob Zemeckis and Robert Gale, why did I say Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale? Bob and Bob have to approve of anything. They're not allowed to do any Back to the Future without both of them signing off on it, which now studios don't give.
Yeah, absolutely
people
not. They're
that
like, no,
type
it's
of
our fucking shit. We're
kill
gonna do whatever we
rights.
want with it. That's wild.
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
Christopher
so they're always
Lloyd's
like,
getting
it will never be
old.
remade.
So
Yeah.
let's throw him up in there. Let's for Back to the Future 4. Let's get
I mean,
Yeah,
Let's
Doc,
Marty McFly.
Doc was
Let's
already
do it.
1,000 years old in the first movie.
Yes, and
it's
he's
such a funny. No, sorry, what were you gonna say?
no,
Nicole?
you go. When he takes his face off,
Right. We're all thinking about
Yes,
that. That's
it's
really
such
good.
a funny
Yeah.
gag.
it is funny.
Because right, you have the joke in the first movie that like, oh, the docu-meat's really old. Now let's go back in time. He barely looks any younger. And then this one starts out where you're like, well, we're now stuck with old Brown as the neutral. We don't want Christopher Lloyd wearing prosthetic wrinkles the whole movie. So let's explain that he had this experimental future rejuvenation technology and he can look 30 years younger. And then he pulls it off and he looks exactly the same.
It's perfect. I love it.
David,
Yes, Griffin.
the mail's never been more important.
That's true. This is an important
I don't want to
time for
get
the mail.
political here, but it's a very important time for the mail, and it's a very meaningful time to send things to people. I don't know about you. Like, here's an example. My good buddy, Max Skolnick, one of my oldest friends, I don't know if that's true, but a good old friend,
Uh-huh.
listener of this show, he and I started a project called the Mug of the Month Club.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Every month, we buy a surprise mug and send it to the other one.
Do you really do that every month?
Yeah, isn't that a nice thing to do?
Yeah, that is nice.
Isn't that sweet? You look very charmed by that. That's the
Yeah.
point, David.
It's nice. It's nice. I dig that.
And do you know what makes it easier?
No idea. Tell me what makes it easier.
Stamps.com. Stamps.com.
Of
Because David,
course.
I talked about this in a past ad read, but we'd used it for blank check as a business before, but I had never signed up personally. And I finally did it. I took the plunge. I got the scale. I got a label maker. I got the sheets to pre-print my own postage. And it's made my life so much easier.
That's
with
great.
things like the Mug of the Month Club, which is so nice. It's so nice to be able to communicate with friends halfway across the country in the middle of a pandemic in that way. Meaningful gifts.
It's very simple. You can, like you say, you print the postage on demand. You don't have to go to the post office. You save money. They even have UPS services with discounts up to 62%. I mean,
that money
cool.
goes where it should, into the cost of the mugs itself.
Right, of course. And you got to get some primo mugs if you're doing a
Got to get a good mug.
Right, okay.
Mug of the Month Club.
You get 5 cents off every stamp with stamps.com. You get 60% off the shipping rates, USPS or UPS. It's a no-brainer. Saves you time and money.
Yes, it's a no-brainer. I was trying to think of a character who has no brain to relate it to them, and I'm coming up blank. It's a scarecrow.
Yeah.
From The Wizard of Oz.
Famously
product.
brainless.
It's a no-brainer. I can't speak highly enough about stamps.com. It's really been a bright light in my life recently and opened up these avenues for me to be able to send stuff out to people in a way that makes me feel less alone.
I love that. And right now, our listeners can get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. You just go to stamps.com, you click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and you type in check. That's stamps.com, enter check.
Now, you said, like, the first act is the stuff that you said you get the most excited about, David. The third act is the stuff that is the most thrilling to me. Like, even if the first act is the most fun because of all the future building they do, just the fucking, like, the magic trick of we get to remake the first movie and, like, tinker with the scenes and show them from different perspectives and fit into all these crevices, you know?
Yeah.
Like Doc Brown talking to himself.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun. I don't know. There's something odd about the third act that, even though I know Biff is insane, it's kind of insane how much he's trying to kill him. You know what I mean? Like with the car chase and all that.
He knows that the future is going to change if he doesn't kill him, or his present will change.
He's got higher stakes to it.
Right.
Yes. I love Griff, the ending of the third. Like, I love the lightning strike. I love all the sort of like time travel joy of like the guy showing up and being like, I was told to be here on this day, like, you know, from this that I love. Like, that's the kind of time travel shit that always gets me excited. I guess I enjoyed the tour back to the first movie, but I'm just kind of like, I love that first movie so much. Like, I'm almost worried that they're messing with it. Maybe that's what sort of sets my teeth on edge about it. I don't know.
Messing with it. It adds to the first movie. Like the first time I watched Back to the Future 2, I then went back and watched Back to the Future 1 and then enjoyed the dance in a different way because I knew more information about the dance.
The idea that there's also a little sneaky Marty off to the side, just right out of frame in all those early scenes. I think it's another effective commentary thing. And like what you're saying, David, like, if people love a first movie, their fear with the sequel is this going to ruin the first movie for me?
Right.
Like, can a sequel retroactively make the first movie worse? Which is why people get like defensive about new installments and franchises, right? And this movie is like, we're literally having a character walk into the edges of the scenes you've already loved and try his hardest to make sure the first movie doesn't get ruined. Like, he's just barely keeping everything at bay.
Right.
I just think that's so fun.
I agree.
It's fun.
Thank you.
I like it. I think it's
You
great.
sound reluctant. What
Well, I
we
think
want
Griffin-
is for you to go, I love it, baby.
it's That is famously
do a
what I
little
always
dance,
do.
David.
Yeah, right. No, I dig it. I think I sort of just enjoy the invention of the first act and the second act more because there's so, like, Zemeckis is so good at that kind of world building, like all the little jokey stuff in the future, all the little jokey stuff in the nightmare world, like all the little details that are crammed into the frame, like those are just very delightful to like take in and like chuckle at, like scene after scene after scene, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when he's doing all the second beat stuff, like all the mirroring of earlier scenes, and also the fact that Hill Valley is so based around that town square that you get to like re-theme that one area. You can always play with the different storefronts and what the clock tower's transformed into.
Do we know how he killed George? Do they explain it? Or is it just that he killed him?
With a gun.
Yeah,
the same
he
gun.
killed George.
Right, yes,
The
right,
same-
right,
shot him.
right, yeah. He just
Poppity
shot
pop
him.
right in
Same
the
gun.
face.
Pop, pop.
I think as a kid, I was so entranced by the idea of the almanac. I liked sports pages in general anyway. Like I always liked just like that there was a part of the newspaper that was just like all these little tables, all this like really boring data. And like the idea that you could use that to become so rich. I don't know. I was taking away a lot of the wrong messages from this movie when I was 10 years old.
Yeah, clearly. They should call you Biff Sims.
He's the MVP. I think Thomas
yourself.
Wilson. I don't know if he's whatever. I think he's the MVP of this movie. He's the one who gets to do the most new stuff, and it's joyful. Like I think Lloyd kind of gets a better showcase in 3. Is that
Correct.
fair?
And and Fox, they like sort of satiate him by letting him play all the other characters because other than that, he's just kind of running around the whole movie. I mean, it feels like all the family stuff is just a gift to him, so he has something to chew on as an actor. But the Tom Wilson stuff's the best. His big monologue to Marty, like explaining the safe leading up to them on the rooftop where he's threatening to kill him is so good. But for me, the big Tom Wilson scene is the car scene between young Biff and old Biff is like so fucking good. And both of those performances are so good. And the frustration of old Biff dealing with how stupid young Biff is and like the self-hatred of that. Like they're just like put in a safe. No, of course you don't have a safe.
Right.
Like he just has such contempt for himself. They're so clever too of like Zemeckis is still using like weird dividers to be able to build the split screen around for any scene where it's 2 actors talking themselves. So with like the 2 Doc Browns outside the clock tower, you have the flagpole. In the car, you have the divider of the windshield. There's that scene where Marty is like in the wings while the prom performance is happening, where they have like the ladder in the way, and the ladder looks composited, like it's got the weird sort of like green screen glow around it. And he does this thing that he does all the time, which is like go out of your way to make something look like it's really there. So he has the Marvin Berry actor walk around the ladder that's not really there just to try to sell it. There's another one where when the car is flying out of like the shitty Hill Valley cul-de-sac, it hits a bunch of boxes and like trash falls over. And the car is clearly a model and the trash is real. And that's such a Roger Rabbit thing of like, he must have just had 7 PAs holding onto wires attached to the trash, just pulling the trash so that they could later composite the car in there. But it's all that like Zemeckis nerd shit that I love.
I love that too. I love all those tiny little details. That's joyous. And like, I don't know, like if you think about this movie, I think like it's an 80s movie. It's in the era of Blade Runner, like having like a shiny, crunchy, silly future versus a terrifying future, and having a terrifying present instead. Like all that I appreciate. I think that is a nice spin on the 80s concept of what's going to happen to us.
And you have that final act that's like, the metatextual stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I like your take. I love your take, Griffin. Can I say that?
He's trying to save the first movie.
Right.
Yes. And he's also like, the stakes are high because of the Biff shit. Like, as we know, Biff is a full-on fucking psycho. He's going to murder his dad.
So is there a better Back to the Future 3? Like, say someone like just talks to Zemeckis and is like, Bobby, like, and like, I like Back to the Future 3. We're going to have a fun time talking about it. But you know what I mean? Like, is there a way to heighten this movie further? Or is this about as bananas as you can be? Like, is this sort of like, is Zemeckis right to be like, we should sort of chill out for the next one and kind of stay put?
Do you have any takes on this, Nicole? I got like a really wild take I thought of while watching this. But I want to hear if you have anything.
No, what's your wild take?
I do think to some degree this movie goes so bug nuts that the third one has to be scaled back in some kind of way. You have to bring it back to more of like an emotional character story away from it being the wild, like they can travel everywhere, the car can do anything, we're jumping all around multiple timelines. I do like the idea of it being sort of set. And the other good thing about the Wild West premise is that you're like, oh, they're at a time really devoid of technology.
Right.
It's really hard for them to get out of it. It's really hard for them to fix the car. That's good. The thought I had watching this one was like, would it be cooler if they went to like prehistoric times?
If you're gonna
Oh.
do this premise, is it cooler if it's Doc and Marty
Yeah.
with like cavemen and dinosaurs?
No.
Nicole's shaking her head.
No, Doc Brown is too old. You don't want to see a body double running away from a T-Rex. It's just, you don't want it. I'm telling you right now, it would be very bad.
Okay.
It's also like what 4 or 5 years before Jurassic Park, so like the dinosaurs would not have looked good. Like they were just ahead of
It
that
would have still been
dinosaur breakthrough.
right stop motion-y dinosaurs. It would have been goofy.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up. Is there any? We should play the box office game,
Okay.
Griff. Is there anything else you want to hit before I kick that off?
Yeah, I want to do a brief merchandise spotlight.
Please.
The hoverboard in the film has the Mattel logo stamped on it, which they did for verisimilitude. They were like, we like the idea of this not just being a high-end technology, but a thing that like little kids play with. Let's get a real toy company to put their name on it so it looks like a real cheesy product. But that combined with the fact that when Back to the Future 2 was coming out, they did this very weird thing that's on the DVD set called Back to the Future Night, where they played the first movie on network TV for the first time, but did a behind the scenes plus sneak preview of the next movie special that's hosted by Leslie Nielsen. It's Leslie Nielsen, like after Naked Gun has made him a star, wearing a tuxedo, getting out of the DeLorean, telling no jokes whatsoever, being super dry and just going like, hello, I'm Leslie Nielsen. You might know me as a movie star, but that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because I love time travel. And it's just him
I love it.
saying like, I love Back to the Future. Don't we all miss Doc and Marty? But in that thing, they show this behind the scenes peek of the hoverboard sequence, which I feel like was their big money sequence. Like, you're not going to believe the special effects of this thing. And in that, Robert Zemeckis says, you know, hoverboards are real. They're like a real technology that the toy companies have had for years and years and years, but they've never been able to sell them because the government won't approve of them. So we just got Mattel to loan us a hoverboard in making the movie. And because of that, kids for years saw that special, saw it with the logo, thought the hoverboard was real. And Mattel got letters for like 5 years after this movie begging them to release a hoverboard. And they just had to like majorly course correct and like say like it was a lie. And then people were like, why are you covering up the truth? You told us the truth the first time. It's a conspiracy. All the hoverboards are in a warehouse somewhere.
I would never buy a hoverboard. They seem very dangerous to me.
Why? I would buy
What
a
if I
hoverboard.
fell
Look fucking
over?
rad.
What if I fell
That's
and then I
fine.
hurt
Get
myself?
some knee pads. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Be
Buy
adventurous.
a box of Band-Aids.
The
Come
closest
on.
thing we have are those things on wheels, right? The little boards that are on two wheels where you kind of like lean forward. Those
hoverboard.
thingies.
They're called hoverboards.
They
That's
are
the
called
thing that
hoverboards,
sucks
right.
about them. They're
They're literally
called
called
hoverboards, but they're
hoverboards.
pretenders to the throne. I got so excited when people were like, oh, kids are now buying all these hoverboards. And I was like, what? They did it? And then I saw that dumb fucking Segway without a handle
that's essentially
bullshit.
what it is. It's a Segway without handles.
Right.
They're dangerous. I've been on one and I've also fallen off one.
Sucks. I'd buy a hoverboard tomorrow.
All right, fine. I don't know. I'm too old for hoverboards. But when I was a kid, I wanted a hoverboard, and I just like that's the introduction of '90s style. That sort of green, pink, you know, like neon. The way it's like tricked out. That's like my childhood. That's what everything looked like when I was a kid, and that's great.
Yeah.
Griff, let's talk about the box office.
It rules. It's so cool. I want a hoverboard. Also, that sequence is one of those things where it's like that alone, I think, took 4 weeks to shoot because it's essentially like Michael J. Fox wearing an Iron Maiden being suspended from cables like a marionette puppet to get like one shot at a time. It's such wild stuff that they make look kind of effortless.
Right. And everything in this movie looks very effortless, which is impressive.
Yeah.
This movie came out, Griffin, Thanksgiving 1989, November 24th. It was the
Not Iron Maiden. Chastity belt is what I meant to say.
Okay.
Wearing a harness for flying scenes is like a chastity belt. That's the joke I wanted to make. I apologize. It wasn't worth going back to.
Okay.
David, box office.
It opened. It was a very big movie. It made lots and lots of money. It made $43 million in its opening weekend.
That's wild. That's too much money.
Tons of money for the 80s. You know, everyone was happy. Like, I don't think it made as much as the original movie ended up making, but big opener. Number 2, Griffin.
It's 89.
89. Now, number 2, Griffin. Nicole, Griff's going to guess the top 5 movies of this weekend. Number
Okay.
2 is
my brain's
a
broken.
notorious bomb, like from a huge star. but one of his most famous bombs.
Okay, I'm sorry. Say the date of the weekend again. It's middle of
November
summer?
24th. No, Thanksgiving 1989.
It's November. Fuck. Okay. Notorious flop from a huge star. Is it an action guy?
It's a comedy guy, but this is like a serious movie that he's doing.
Fuck. It's comedy guy doing a serious movie. So it's not.
He directed it.
And he directed
Yeah.
it. Why am I not thinking of this? It's like, this is so obvious, right?
I would say it's not like a movie people remember that well, but it's a famous flop. It's a big comedy star. He put two other big comedy legends in it. He directed it. He wrote it. Like, it was his huge passion project.
Harlem Nights?
It's Harlem Nights. Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, big period piece. Huge flop. That's what it is. Have you ever seen it?
When you look at it, Harlem Nights did make money.
It did. But I feel like at the time everyone just lambasted it,
Yes.
right? Like it just got this like terrible. Have you ever seen Harlem Nights? Has anyone ever seen Harlem Nights?
I sure
Never seen it.
haven't.
No. I mean, neither have I. I've always wanted to check it out because
I love Eddie.
Me too.
I've seen
Sure.
most of them. I don't know why I've never seen that one. I remember hearing some interview with him where they were like, do you like directing? Would you ever do it again after Harlem Nights? And he was like, no, people just kept on coming up to me and asking me what I thought of this pillow in the background. I don't care. That was the way he described directing. He was like, just stop asking me about pillows.
All right, Griff. Number 3, it's the Disney movie. It's a cartoon, animated film. Big hit. 1989.
It's a big hit. It's The Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid. It's just starting, but it's going to make tons and tons of money.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4. Another huge comedy of the year. One of the biggest movies of the year. Very gimmicky. A director we will do on the show one
Twins?
day. Not Twins.
Twins is
similarly
earlier.
gimmicky.
Similarly gimmicky.
Sort of revives someone's career.
Oh, is it? Fuck, it's Someone Will Do Someday. It's not.
Yes.
Oh God.
No. But
I'm
it
trying to
is
think of
like
career revivals. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's it's a kids movie. It's like a kids comedy.
Hocus Pocus.
Kids. That's a great guess, but no.
No, it's a bad
Not
guess.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kid.
No, not Honey, I Shrunk the Kid, but it does involve special effects, sort of,
Yeah.
I guess. Something crazy's happening in this movie.
Something crazy.
Something unusual.
Is the title describing the wild thing that's happening?
It's describing. It's like I can't describe the title. It's something's happening.
Ghost
Like
Dad.
that's what the title is. What if there was a ghost dad? No, come on, Griffin. Comedy director.
It's a big comedy director who will probably cover someday. It's not Ivan Reitman.
No, female director.
It's a Penny Marshall movie.
Nope.
No, it's Look Who's Talking.
It's Look Who's Talking.
Look
Amy
Who's
Heckerling's
Talking.
Look Who's Talking with John Travolta and a talking baby voiced by Bruce Willis.
Yes.
That's what the movie is. It was
Yes.
one of the biggest hits of the year. And then
Humongous.
there's another huge hit. A famous sappy movie is number 5. A famous crier.
A famous crier.
weepy.
Steel Magnolias.
Is it-
Steel Magnolias.
Oh wait, I got that right.
This is a hot. You got it right.
Nailed it.
This is a hot 5. That's a hot 5, I think. Those
89
are Harlem Nights' big bomb, but
89 was so big, and I feel like 89 was a year where the biggest opening weekend record was broken like 4 times. Like, I think Ghostbusters 2 broke
sure.
it, and then Batman broke what Ghostbusters 2 had broken. You had a lot of big sequels for the first time. You had a lot of movie stars at their peak. It was wild.
Yeah. No, you're right. 89, the big movies are Batman, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future 2,
Right.
Lethal Weapon 2.
All right,
Like, it's a lot of big
boys,
sequels. There's a lot of
boys,
gimmicky movies like Look Who's Talking.
We gotta
But we're
let
done. Yes, we're
Nicole
done. We gotta get
go.
Nicole out of here.
I'm sorry.
We gotta let Nicole
I
go.
know.
Nicole's
I
gotta
know,
You
go.
don't
it's
have to
fine.
apologize.
We're
We did
done.
it, but we don't want to hold you any longer. So thank you for being on the show.
No.
Thank
Yes,
you for having
absolutely.
me. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye-bye, Nicole.
See you, Nicole.
David.
Griffin.
Look, we're not doing a Spike Lee miniseries right now.
No, that's true. He'd be a long one. He'd take about half a year.
He'd be a long one. And we're maybe not the two guys who need to talk about Spike Lee for 6 months, as much as we're huge fans.
Maybe we'll do it someday.
But there's a reason I bring this up, David.
Sure. I thought you were just talking shop.
I mean, I always like to talk shop, but I don't want to confuse people with what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Because this is a Back to the Future Part 2 episode. It is not a Do the Right Thing episode.
Okay.
But sometimes we all want to do the right thing to keep our bodies healthy in the long run.
Oh, sure. Right. I mean, even if you try really hard to like eat kale salads, drink green smoothies, you might not be getting all the essential nutrients you need on a daily basis.
Well, creak. What just entered? We're not in the studio. We're recording over Zoom, but I'm acting like something just walked into the room, David. It's Ritual, the obsessively researched vitamin for women.
Oh, you're saying it the English way.
Well, how do you know that?
All right. Ritual's essentials have the nutrients most of us don't get enough of from food, all in clean, absorbable forms. No shady additives or ingredients that can do more harm to your body than good. It's just too easy to take capsules, gives you 9 nutrients, gives you a strong foundation for your health.
Makes you feel good.
Love feeling good.
Let me talk about this in a little greater detail, okay? Ritual Essential for Women is the multivitamin reimagined. You got D3, omega-3, everything in between. Ritual's Essential for Women helps fill gaps in a woman's diets. Their no nausea capsule design is gentle on an empty stomach. And there's a mint tab in every bottle to keep things fresh, so you don't get that fishy aftertaste common with most omega-3s. Nothing fishy here.
So, yeah, because sometimes those vitamins really wreck my stomach.
They smell terrible. Terrible. I've had to take fish oil pills before, and they suck, and they smell bad, and they make me nauseous. I wish I was a woman, David, so I could have Ritual Essential for Women.
We've had their for men equivalents. We've taken those. Those are good.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about
I
today.
understand. Yes. Well,
for this copy.
Well, all of Ritual's vegan-friendly, sugar-free, non-GMO, gluten-free, allergen-free. Okay, that's all out there to see. You can check on the label. Everything is put down there for you, so there's no weird ingredients you have to worry about. And it's
easy
delivered.
to start, easy to snooze. Yeah, it's $1 a day to have it all delivered to your home. No strings attached. This isn't any sort of Ashton Kutcher, Natalie Portman vehicle, or it is that because no strings are attached.
That's right. The strings are not attached. Right.
I'm sorry. Okay. I got off point here, but this is mandatory. Better health doesn't happen overnight, David. And right now, Ritual is offering our listeners 10% off during your first 3 months.
Right. You can fill in the gaps in your diet with Essential for Women, a small step that supports a healthy foundation for your body. Just visit ritual.com/blankcheck to start your ritual today. That's 10% off your first 3 months at ritual.com/blankcheck.
Hey, get on the bus with Ritual. Essential vitamin
that's a
for
good
women.
movie.
See, I brought it
we could talk about it. Like that's a
back
weird
to
one.
the Spike Lee one. Maybe we'll do Spike Lee.
And then there was 3.
And then there was 3.
She froze while waving goodbye and smiling, but it looked like she was just committing to
It looked like
happy.
she was sort of doing a freeze frame goodbye,
Yes.
like in a sitcom.
Right, which Ben is now doing.
The other thing that I was sort of like watching this movie, I'm like, damn, this is a dense movie. There's all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then what I often do when we're doing the show is I have like the Wikipedia page open so I can just have the plot summary up. And like plot wise, it's a very... There's not actually a lot going on in the movie. You know what I mean? Like it's all antics, but like it's pretty simple. Like you said, like it's like this and then that and then they fix it. Like it's all pretty surfacey, which maybe is my problem with it, but is also kind of the point. I don't know. I think this is a weird movie.
That's what I like about it. And to you saying, David, like, is there a better version of Back to the Future 3 that could exist? I feel like this is the best possible Back to the Future that could ever exist. I feel like this movie has all of the smartest and sort of most
sequel.
Yes.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. You said Back to the Future. You just said it's the best Back to the Future.
I think I said
that could
2.
Exist. Oh, I might. Maybe
I might have swallowed it. I don't know. Zoom sucks. But
what if?
Right? Because
I was about to say, what if this was 3, but maybe not? Like maybe
What's
you
2?
need to do, like I said, you need to do all the wild stuff first. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other point is, I mean, like, I was watching the making of stuff, and Spielberg keeps on saying, like, we were following in the Star Wars model. Like, the second one is the dark one. We wanted to make the one where everything went wrong.
Yes, that's fair. And it ends on a cliffhanger that is ostensibly scary, right? Like Doc is gone.
And then it's
right,
also the first movie to end with the trailer for the next movie ever.
which is a bold decision at the time. It
Yeah.
does kind of suck a little bit of the power of the ending away.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of better to leave Marty on that truly like, fuck, what's going to happen? And then instead it's like, anyway, soon they're going to be in the Wild West. Yeehaw! Right? And you're like, well, okay, I guess they're going to go to the fucking Wild West then. I guess that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, they talked about they were like worried that audiences would revolt if the movie ended on such a down note. So they wanted to give them a guarantee that the third one was in fact happening. Like it was more just to show like, look, we have footage. I swear to God, the movie is like a given. But it's kind of a thing where I almost wish they cut it out for like home video releases. Like it just cut to credits now. Even though I'm
You just get rid of that. Right.
The stickler for like show it to me the way it was in theaters.
Yeah. You got to keep it. It's a weird little artifact that they did that. Ben, before we wrap up. You didn't get to talk much because, Nicole had a heart out. We wanted to get, Nicole talking, but do you have any takes on this movie? I just feel like the hoverboards, the clothes,
the fashion,
the clothes. I mean, that's what I wanted to jump in on. I think that this is so 90s. Like that's what we were talking about too. The colors, the projection of that, but the gang. Right? Because think about in the first movie, like a thing I wrote down, right, in my little congratulations idea notebook is I want to get customized 3D glasses because I think that fucking rules is just an accessory to just wear.
Right.
Because one of Biff's henchmen
Do you
wears
know that
shit.
character's name?
No.
The henchman who wears the 3D glasses?
What is it?
3D.
Hell yeah. That's good. But I brought up the helmet. Their fucking look it's so fucking good.
So good.
And yeah, I think even just down to like, I think a little thing that I always remembered is Griff's one metal knee pad.
Yes.
Like just little shit like that. It's like Lost Boys meets like Blade Runner.
Right.
It's just such a great amalgamation of all this stuff, but then it's still a kid's like movie, right? So it's not like sharp and like edgy. I love it.
Can I give you the names of the gang?
Yeah.
Of the future gang?
Please.
Data, Spike, and Whitey. Did you have a friend called Spike, Ben? Because I feel like you should have in high school.
No, because that feels
Should've known
too
a guy
on the
called Spike.
nose. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I like about it.
I had a friend named Spike. I lived with a guy named Spike. I was the Spike friend. I have a different friend named Spike now.
That's right.
I'm lousy with Spikes.
Wait, you have 2 Spikes in your life?
You know what? In fact, I arguably have 3. One of my best friends in high school, who I later lived with when we both dropped out of college, was named Spike.
Right.
I have a friend who now goes by Spike. And then my best friend in college, for the brief time I was there before dropping out, was a guy who was known as Spike. And when he went to college, he was like, I'm going to shake up my brand and change my name. So I knew him as Nick. And then I've stayed in touch with him over the years. And when I hang out with him and his friends, they all call him Spike.
Wow.
Like I knew him in the one period when he kind of wasn't Spike.
It's weird that he was like, I have to rebrand. I can't be this cool anymore. I can't be Spike anymore. I'm just going to be Nick. I'll be regular.
He used to
old
wear
Nick.
like a spiked bracelet. And so everyone called him Spike. And he's like, I don't want to be the bracelet guy anymore. And I think he didn't realize, I can still be named Spike and not wear the bracelet.
It's just, right, Ben, I mean, I know it's not quite vaporwave because we're not quite at like the mid 90s Encarta vibes that are the sort of the base of vaporwave, but still just like the hologram of the shark biting Marty, like all that stuff.
Yep. No, absolutely.
And for how much they got right,
like in their future predictions. Like they say like 50% of it we got right, 50% of it we got wrong. Stuff like how quickly 80s nostalgia was going to come into play. Like Cafe 80s looks like just a pop-up that someone would have. But there's shit like there's the Surf Vietnam poster in the back alley, which they were just like, this is ridiculous. There's no chance Vietnam is ever going to become a tourist attraction. They nailed that.
Right.
Like the gas prices, the thing with like watching like 8 different screens at once and the kid wearing the headset at the dinner table.
The joke that the Cubs are in the World Series, which everyone was like, ha ha ha. And, they famously never make it. They did win, I believe, the year after. I think they won the World Series 2016.
Yeah.
And that there's a Miami team, which at the time was not true, but now there is one. Like that, all that stuff's fun.
It's making me think that you really like this first movie and the second movie are really the only times where you can make these kinds of projections and jokes, because you can't do that now.
No. Because it would just be climate change.
Bad.
It would just be climate change.
Yeah,
and that shit. Right.
Visit
Capitalism.
Floodland. Like
It was truly.
That's what I read some interview with Christopher Lloyd where they were like, I assume like as he gets asked all the time, we're like, would you want to make a Back to the Future 4? And he's like, yeah, if it's about climate change. I don't really know how else you do that.
I feel like he's shot new stuff as Doc Brown about climate change that they've like put on the internet or put on the re-releases and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, it seems like that's the only thing he wants to talk about. Good for him. Christopher Lloyd's a legend. It is interesting for how much technology stuff they got right. The fashion stuff, they were totally kind of off point for the 2000s, but then on point for the early 90s. Like everyone just took a lot of these aesthetics and started manufacturing them in 1992.
Yeah, I feel like that's often true with these future movies. You really are just predicting 5 years in the future.
Right.
In terms of clothes.
Marty's shoes look like Air Jordans, like from like the mid 90s.
100%. Right.
You want the other merch spotlight is like they've produced those shoes a couple times in like crazy limited runs that they do for Michael J. Fox's charity to raise money. And they go for like tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just insane shit. But Nike does have the patent on self-lacing shoes. Like they have filed that patent. They have it. They have not released it. I feel like they at some point were like showed off some early prototype that didn't totally do it, but it's actively a thing that they've been working on since this movie because they want to be the ones to do it since this movie gave them the glory of that creation.
Right.
Pepsi did like in 2015, they released the bottle that looked kind of like the bottle in this movie. Like all the companies that are used in this movie kind of embraced it. But I want to say, Ben, you mentioned the spiky boot, the one boot that Griff has, that's also like becomes the biggest design aesthetic of like 90s comic books, David. Like that becomes like Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane. The character has one oversized boot.
Absolutely. You're not wrong.
And then the other foot's kind of normal.
Right. Yeah, you're totally right.
I just feel like people crib from this movie all the time.
They do.
And I think it rules and I love it.
I'm glad you love it. I like your take. There's just always going to be something for me with this movie where I'm like more enjoying it than I'm loving it. But I don't know. Maybe there's just something wrong with me. Maybe. Yeah. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, there's definitely something wrong with you. I don't know why you keep on arguing about those extra 2 inches, but for me as a kid, I preferred this one, which is objectively the wrong opinion. But I think I just got so excited by the wildness of it.
I think that is a classic kid opinion, though, where you're just like, this rules. You know what I mean?
They
like,
do
you're just
more.
like, this is so much fun. Right. Yeah.
It's bigger.
Yeah.
Can I say, though, especially now that Nicole's gone, because I just think she would have no interest in this conversation, what's the movie that is most indebted to Back to the Future 2 specifically?
Avengers Endgame.
Avengers Endgame is so Back to the Future 2
100%.
in every sense. Yeah. It's just like watching this again, not having seen it in a while. It is wild how the structure is almost the same of like, you create the future that's worse than you ever could have imagined. And the only way to fix it is to go back into the previous movie and relive your greatest hits.
It's so funny because Avengers Endgame makes it clear. It's like, but, Back to the Future is not how this stuff actually works. But it is basically the same context, like basically the same like idea of a
wild.
movie. Like let's go back and look at the greatest hits and sort of have fun dodging around with them, which is fine.
Totally. I was clowning on the Russo brothers Pizza Film School in our I Want to Hold Your Hand episode. And then I believe literally the next day they posted an episode with Bob Gale that's actually really good and worth watching. And it's Marcus and McFeely, the two Russos and Gale. And they just get into a lot of the storytelling principles that Gale and Zemeckis had at the time, and how like the Russos and Marcus and McFeely are trying to like math it and like talk about like, but you have to do this by page 16 and this and that. And Gale's just like, I don't know, we just did stuff because we thought it was fun. But like these are the rules we hold ourselves to in terms of character integrity, in terms of fulfilling promises to the audience, not the same sort of like structure, mechanics shit. But it's so clear how much they were beholden to these movies. And then also that they were like, we had to explicitly write in a character saying it doesn't work like Back to the Future, because Back to the Future becomes the thing that everyone thinks of in terms of like cause and effect with time travel.
Right. And that's fine. I get it. Like I feel like I stuck up for the Russo brothers when you were clowning on them. Then someone posted the intro to their thing. And I was like, ugh, this looks like the worst. And I sort of felt bad about it.
It's really hard.
And then now you're saying like, yeah, but and so now I'm like, all right, I'll give them a shot, right? Like I'll like...
I like a great many things about those guys.
Yeah,
there are a lot of things that are very easy to clown on with them. And that intro...
is definitely, that's exactly
top of the list.
Right.
But I recommend that people watch the Back to the Future episode of Pizza Film School. I recommend that people watch all 26 episodes of Back to the Future, the animated series, available now on used DVD. It's essential. It is an essential watch.
Is it?
Essential. Essential, David. Stop your The Wire rewatch and watch Back to the Future, the animated series.
I'm not rewatching The Wire. I have thought about rewatching The Wire because... it's whatever, the sort of time we're all like rewatching shit right now, right? Like that's sort of like, but my Forky is a teacher in his spare time. I don't know how to do the Forky bit about this. And The Wire's school series, I think it's just going to be too much.
Yes, it will be too much.
It's so devastating, that shit.
Then why not go back in time and hang out with these friends?
Yeah, you know what? Fine. I mean, Jesus. I mean, you talked me into it, Griffin. I'm going to buy the back to... I'm not going to do that. I'm definitely not going to do that.
Clara, Jules Verne.
I remember watching it when I was a
Biff
kid.
and Amy.
I watched it when I was a kid, much like I watched like the Beetlejuice cartoon, like a lot of those cartoons that were based on movies that I may not have even seen yet. Like, but I just sort of like soaked in the aesthetics by these like little Saturday morning cartoons first.
I absolutely watched all of those cartoons before I saw any of those movies.
Yeah.
Bill and Ted, Beetlejuice, Back to the Future. Yeah.
The one I remember always is the strangest. I still remember to this day is the MC Hammer.
Oh, yeah. Hammerman.
His friends and they talk to him.
Right.
What a that's a weird thing, I guess, that doesn't exist anymore, huh? Like where people could just shoehorn any concept into that time slot.
I so badly want it to come back, and it's one of my great disappointments that I think not Back to the Future, Fast and Furious Spy Racers, which is the Fast and Furious animated series that's on Netflix, is not that at all. Like when they announced they're doing a Fast and Furious animated series, I was like, great. It's going to be the whole cast. They'll bring Paul Walker back from the dead with a sound alike, and they'll all be driving like robot cars. And instead, it's Dominic Toretto's nephew working for like a government agency.
Griffin, this is like one of you are so annoyed about this.
So annoyed.
Right? Like, yes, so you brought this up to me multiple times.
It's one of the 4 or 5 biggest issues plaguing our world today is Back to the Future. Why do I keep saying Back to the Future? Fast and Furious Spy Racers.
You wanted to go on that the cartoon show is the thing that's been plaguing us the most, and we'll end there.
Because I want more. Like this is what I want. I want like John Wick the animated series. I want someone to do like a Saturday morning style John Wick series that functions like the Rambo cartoon series, where John Wick has like a team of orphans who help him like defend the future.
Or they're all dogs.
Right. And his guns are all like stun guns. They're no real bullets. Like, I just love the weird bastardization of like movies that weren't totally meant for kids, but then become very successful with kids. And then you make these odd cartoon adaptations where like Beetlejuice, the animated series, is about Beetlejuice and Lydia being best friends and Lydia just going into the ghost world to help Beetlejuice out with his problems and vice versa. Whereas in the movie, Beetlejuice is a man who tries to marry a 13-year-old against her will.
Yeah, he's less cool in the movie, I would say.
Right. They're like good buddies. And Back to the Future is about like Doc Brown's annoying kids and Uncle Marty having to clean up their messes. You know, Einstein driving the car and shit. Like, I just love this. I want all adult movies to have animated series again. It's all I ask for.
Make a Mad Max cartoon. I'd watch the hell out of it.
Yeah.
About the guitar guy, just him and his
Mad
band.
Max Adventures or whatever. Yeah, do Doof Warrior.
Yeah.
Doof and Sons. Right. Lil Doof. I don't know. Whatever you want. Do Doof and Son. Doof and Lil Doof. Well, thank you folks all for listening. Next week, Back to the Future Part 3. We conclude our Back to the Future month.
Yes, join us next week for Back to the Future 3, which we're going to record very soon.
Yes.
And I'm excited for that just because that's a silly, loosey-goosey movie.
It's a silly, loosey-goosey movie. It's the ultimate Gentleman 6, and it's certainly the one I've seen the least. So I'm excited to watch it again with fresh eyes.
And yeah, I don't know. Bobby Zemeckis, we're still in the golden years for this guy.
I know.
You know, everything's going fine right now.
I'll say, that's the one final thing I wanted to say. Watching it now through this prism, you do start to see a lot of the things that start to plague Zemeckis come up in this movie. This feels like the first one where it's like, it feels like Zemeckis and Cundy nailed down this like super shiny Amblin-y look that I feel like is what all 90s like adventure films, family comedies, like blockbusters all kind of have this color palette, this sort of bright shiny lighting going forward, where even in the nighttime scenes, everyone's kind of cleanly lit, right?
Right.
Whereas the first one has some grit to it. Two,
I agree with that.
I'm designing entire sequences around showing off new technological tricks I've developed.
That's what was occurring to me, right? Where he's just like, can we do this? And they're like, maybe.
Right.
And you're like, okay, Bobby, you know, like it's all in service of something insane.
Yeah.
Which is good in this because the movie's kind of just bananas anyway, so who cares? But it's going to be his Achilles heel, like more and more.
And the stuff is good. The tricks he pulls off are good this time. Like, it's worthwhile, and it's a lot of stuff that was new and that changed the industry forever. He pioneered a lot of shit on this movie. But the final piece of it is the Zemeckis obsession with sort of being clever and being a step ahead of the audience. Spielberg says in some behind the scenes thing that he's like an ornery filmmaker and he wants to have like a struggle. He wants to feel like he's pushing against something.
When I interviewed him, he was so fucking ornery. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's definitely his energy.
But the more successful he becomes, the more he's like, fuck you, I'm doing mocap Polar Express. Like, he wants people to be doubting him every time and trying to out-clever them. There's an amazing quote from him in a behind-the-scenes thing, though, where he goes like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was like really frustrated when we were trying to come up with ideas for this movie because I don't really care about time travel. I don't really care about the future. And I don't really care about aliens. Like, the future and aliens, I think, are the two least interesting things you can make movies about because it's just you guessing. You don't do anything. You know, you don't know what you're writing about. You're just making shit up. And then it's like 7 years later, he does Contact. He does another time travel movie, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
What a weird guy.
What a weird guy. And we'll be talking about how weird he is for the next 4 months. Thank you all for listening. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe. Go to blankies.com. Blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit.
Blankies.com.
Go to Shopify, our Shopify page for merch. We'll have new stuff coming soon. Go to patreon.com /blank check. I always get corrected for that. /blank check for our special features where we're doing the Alien franchise, but also going to do an episode on Tales from the Crypt, the Zemeckis Gale episodes of Tales from the Crypt.
We have the Crypt Keeper himself as a guest.
Yes.
Oh,
we do have the
spoiler.
Crypt Keeper.
Sorry, guys.
No, what's weird, we have the Crypt Keeper booked, but for What Lies Beneath. That's the weird thing. Is he picked that one.
He's an expert.
He just likes it.
Is the Crypt Keeper canceled? Is that possible?
Ooh, yeah.
He sounds like someone who might
I'm
get
sorry.
canceled.
I'm sorry.
point.
Crypt Keeper is an ultimate ally. He's a gentleman on set. He fights hard for
I'm
the
so
rights
sorry.
of his
I'm
crew
so
and his
sorry.
cast members. Yeah, please don't say that. The Crypt Keeper is like Hugh Jackman.
Okay.
He's like very supportive of everyone around him. I don't know why I went to Hugh
All
Jackman.
right, we're done. That's it. We're done.
Okay,
you have
that's
to
the
do
end
it
of the
as
episode.
always. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of right. And when you say you got to do an end as always, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on my end as always, because usually I'm just kind of like rolling into it, and now you sort of circled it, put a spotlight
social
on
media
it.
and
I gotta thank Ange, Lee Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bone and Pat Rounds for our artwork, of course. And as always, David kind of screwed me with the end as always. I don't know what to say. I would have done a great end as always, but the pressure became too great, and you folks just have to imagine what it would have been had David not burdened me with expectations. It feels like
I'm turning my Zoom off. You just keep going.
it's my Back to the Future 2. How could I ever live up to what people wanted it to be at this point?